Based on a true story, a beautiful clerk agrees to be a man's island wife for a year. However, things get tense between them when she refuses him intimacy. In preparation for his next book, Gerald Kingsland prepares an ad to find a wife to spend 1 year on a deserted island with. Days after, Lucy Irvine goes to work at the Inland Revenue while Gerald attends a part-time job as a swimming instructor for kids. After the day, the writer finds his ad published in Time Out magazine. Meanwhile, Lucy heads to a date and picks up the same magazine on her way. The following day, Lucy reads the magazine and notices Gerald's ad. This piques her interest. That evening, Gerald watches TV with his sons, though he is clearly bored and longs for an adventure. To amuse himself, he pretends to leave money on the couch before heading away. When his sons try to take the money, he uses a line to make it zip back to him, laughing at his victory. He then calls Lucy since he has already seen her response to his ad. The two agree to meet at a restaurant the following evening to discuss her application. Gerald arrives first and spots an older lady staring at him. Fortunately for him, Lucy arrives, confirming that his applicant isn't the older woman. Lucy finds it amusing that their meeting is like a blind date. This has the writer laughing, and he admits that she's the first applicant he finds interesting. The two continue meeting over dinner to discuss the trip. One night, Gerald admits that he met with 3 other applicants, comparing himself to the protagonist of the movie Man Friday as he prepares for his adventure. However, Lucy points out that the man in the film forced a native to help him, hence why he survived. Gerald clarifies that he is preparing necessities for the adventure. He lists these as food, medicine, and finding the correct island with a type of wildlife he can survive. Lastly, he needs the right companion. Lucy giggles at the fact that he mentions the companion last. She absent-mindedly touches his knee during this but pulls away when Gerald places his hand over hers. Despite this, the man charms his way with her, so Gerald ends up in Lucy's bed the following morning after their evening together. She even kisses his forehead while he's asleep. Soon, Lucy's research leads her to choose the island of Tuin as their destination. However, when they try to get the permit, they learn that the government doesn't allow an unmarried couple to stay on the island alone. Lucy insists on searching for another place, but Gerald reminds her that they've been looking for 3 months already. The lawyer from Gerald's publisher also reminds them that they've spent the company's money to prepare for this trip as a down payment for the writer's memoir. If they can't continue the expedition, they must return the money. This forces the two to get a court wedding, leaving the bride devastated. Right after the wedding, Lucy's mood brightens as she finally sees the island paradise she's chosen. Upon arriving, the two celebrate the nature around them while a journalist, Janice, stays to take photographs for the book. While Gerald explores the island further, Lucy organizes their supplies. During this, Janice offers to send a helicopter to pick up the woman in 2 weeks in case she regrets her decision. However, Lucy takes offense at this, insisting that she and Gerald have chosen to stay. The writer suddenly returns to them, having found a source of fresh water nearby. Hours later, Janice's ride to the mainland arrives, so she happily gets on board, leaving the couple alone in their paradise. Immediately, Lucy relaxes and unclothes since no one else can see her. Gerald takes this as an invitation to get some action, but she offers to make some tea instead. As they set up camp later, the woman discovers that her companion forgot to pack iodine and extra power supplies. This angers her, so she leaves. As the sun sets, however, the sounds of wildlife scare her, so Lucy hurries back into their tent. Gerald tries using the chance to start something again, but she refuses. The following day, Lucy enjoys swimming while Gerald fishes. However, he realizes that he hates touching dead fish, so his wife reminds him that they can't cook them alive. She compares his complaints to when she read a boring book, but unlike him, she finished what she started. They eventually catch lobsters, and while Lucy cooks, she wonders what Gerald does when he's bored. He finds the question ridiculous, but she wants to know what goes on in his head. He tells her that his mind is like his manhood. It sometimes goes up and sometimes down, and when it gets too excited, it explodes. However, when it's not doing anything, it comes up with something surprising. On another day, the two explore the woods further, but Gerald stops to gaze at the dead birds hanging on branches. Lucy excuses that he always makes excuses to stop and sit down, so she goes on without him. After days on the island, Lucy gets fed up with Gerald's behavior, given that he keeps finding something else to do rather than build a proper shelter. Not minding her, the man just dances around on the beach. Days later, the woman points out that their rice supply supply will only last them a couple of months at best. Gerald assures her that he'll keep them fed, starting with growing his own garden on the island. His wife points out that there's plenty of food in the ocean, but he asserts that they'll die if they just rely on seafood. Eventually, they work together to get coconuts from a tree with a wasp nest. This leads to Gerald getting attacked by wasps. That evening, Lucy tends to his stings, but the man uses their closeness to get some intimacy. She still refuses, so the man relents. One morning, Gerald gives up on fishing while Lucy feels weak from not eating any meat for days. He dismisses her concerns, making the woman wonder if he's hurt by her constantly rejecting his advances. She apologizes and confesses that she's scared of his anger since there's no one else but them on the island. However, this frustrates him further. He gets on top of her and points out that he hasn't changed since arriving on the island. However, she changed and became cold towards him. He asserts that they have over 9 months left on the island, so he dares her if she can last without physical intimacy during their stay. Just then, Lucy's fishing line tugs at her. The two work together and wrangle in a large fish, distracting them from their previous argument. However, the man feels guilty over his words and leaves the woman with her catch. He doesn't return that night, making Lucy worry. When morning arrives and Gerald is still missing, the woman screams into the island, hurt that he'd abandon her just because she won't sleep with him. Meanwhile, Gerald traverses the jungle aimlessly, causing plenty of wounds on himself. The woman eventually finds him by the freshwater pond. He apologizes for his behavior, and Lucy cries in his arms. Weeks later, Gerald's garden is starting to grow. However, this doesn't satisfy him since he's starting to miss things like cigars. Since he's wallowing in misery, Lucy is stuck tending to their needs. He still asks for some intimacy, but the woman has him figured out already. She thinks his meanderings are an act to make him seem quirky. The man defends that everyone has secrets and women like mystery. They love the idea of being the only one who understands their partners. However, once the mystery is gone, women would realize that they never truly cared about them. Lucy tries arguing against this but ultimately decides it's not worth fighting about. One day, Gerald finds the musings Lucy has written, wherein she claims that the sun is her lover. The writer laughs at this, offending the woman. While gathering clams later, the man reminisces about his beautiful mother who was always working. His stories continue at night, sharing when he first got tempted by a woman's beauty. Uninterested, Lucy brings up building a proper shelter so they can stop using the tent. He ignores this, so she points out that this island might be where they die to bring him back to his senses. She also reminds him about food on the mainland, getting the man frustrated. Ultimately, they both start craving proper meals. In the morning, Gerald discovers that his wounds have gotten infected, worrying him. Later that day, Lucy spots a yacht arriving. She quickly calls her husband, and they watch the man reach the shore warily before showing themselves. The men, Rod and Jason, work for the country's government who've arrived to take the island's census. Feeling territorial, Gerald declares that they don't have food to spare, but the men assure them that they have enough food to share. This brightens Lucy's day, though her husband remains apprehensive. The men notice that the couple are starved, but Gerald gets defensive and asserts that they're doing well. He then orders Lucy to make tea for them, and she obliges. The men soon provide food and drinks for the couple. Seeing her getting friendly with their guests, Gerald reminds Lucy that this is her first time entertaining visitors as a married woman. She dismisses this and just continues her conversation with Jason. Learning about their situation, Jason wonders how they're getting to know each other on the island. Lucy shares that they talk about their lives, but Rod questions what happens when a couple knows too much about the other. He thinks since there won't be any pretenses left, there's nothing for them to hide. Jason adds that married couples can hold each other's secrets for ransom, while Rod comments that he'd kill if that ever happened to him. Gerald rolls his eyes at this and clarifies to the men that they are only married to be allowed on the island. Later, Lucy takes their guests to explore the island's rock formation. During this, she apologizes for her husband's rudeness, though she also complains that he hasn't had any initiative since arriving on the island. She thinks it's because he's older and has his wounds to deal with. While resting, Rod teaches Lucy how to play the flute, forming a bond with her. They end up kissing, but Lucy refuses to go further, reminding herself that she's married. The temptation, however, reminds the woman how much she'd given up for this island adventure, frustrating her. That night, Gerald scolds his wife for flirting with the other men. He even threatens her life if she continues. Unbeknownst to him, the woman grabs her knife and imagines stabbing him. Ultimately, however, she drops the blade. The following morning, the guests leave the island, giving the couple some privacy again. Gerald then plans to go fishing with the new hooks and bait that the men left them, but Lucy finally yells at him for embarrassing her. The man laughs maniacally at this, pointing out that she's the one who threw herself at their guests. She asserts that she didn't do anything out of her misguided loyalty to the writer, though now she wishes she gave in to temptation. She then scolds him for being useless and hopeless. Offended, Gerald slams the makeshift tent he made, pointing out that he helped around. He accuses her of wanting a better-looking companion like Rod and Jason, hence why she won't sleep with him. Lucy defends that she was trying to defend her husband to the two, refusing to let them think that Gerald lets her go to waste on that island. However, she can't even say he cares for her because it isn't the truth. To prove this, she easily tears the so-called house he built before storming off. She unleashes her anger in the jungle, but this ultimately leaves her feeling hopeless. Eventually, she returns to the writer, but they soon run out of fresh water. The woman notices that her time of the month hasn't arrived, making her worry. Thirsty and hungry, the two get desperate to save what little water they have to save their garden. However, the plants won't grow anymore. One day, Lucy gets sick after eating a fruit she found. As he comforts her that night, Gerald researches the fruit she found in one of their books and discovers that it's poisonous if not boiled first. The woman grows weaker by the day after consuming the fruit, so her husband desperately takes her to the sea, hoping it could help her regain consciousness at least. Gerald soon realizes that he's too weak and hungry to even hold his playing cards. Thankfully, Lucy recovers from the poison and goes to find food, but to no avail. The starved couple eventually becomes too weak to even leave their tent. During this, they reminisce about what they miss from the city, perhaps regretting their island retreat. Fortunately, a group of nuns and villagers from the nearby island of Badu pass by and tend to their wounds. They even provide antibiotics and supplies. After patching them up, the group kneels to give thanks for their fortunate encounter. During this, a more cheerful Gerald does magic tricks to entertain the kids in the group. He also helps repair the group's boat, so the boatman, Ronald, promises to send more food in return. After they've left, the couple starts recovering and doing more work to provide for themselves. With the boat they borrowed from their guests, they're able to catch more fish, and Gerald even gets a job helping Ronald repair some machines. Soon, they build a more stable shelter, and Gerald's mood improves, having found something to do. However, their year together is almost up, so he wonders what his wife will do afterward. Before she can answer, Ronald's boat arrives, so Gerald goes to meet with his friend. While her husband goes to Badu, Lucy starts writing her own memoir. She notes that she barely recognizes herself since she arrived on the island, though she's happy that Gerald has found something he likes to do. With the island entirely for herself, Lucy starts appreciating her solitude. She even hones her skills in shooting, feeling free to try things out on her own terms. To her delight, her time of the month also returns, assuring her that she's in better health. 2 days later, Gerald returns with more supplies. He gushes about his time with the island villagers and how much he'd learned from them. However, when he tosses her a frozen chicken, she starts questioning what the man is doing. She reminds him that they came to the island to learn how to survive, but now she's feeling like a simple mechanic's wife. She points out that he's lost sight of their goals. Despite this, she beams upon seeing that the man finally gets their electricity working. Lucy apologizes for her ramblings, excusing that he's been leaving her alone for days since the group found him. She's scared that she and the island aren't enough, so Gerald asserts that it isn't the case. However, he admits that perhaps he didn't have to look for something else to fill his time if he felt intimate with her. Lucy laughs at this, but when her husband wonders if this means she's finally ready, she leaves without answering. After thinking it over, Lucy finally gives in to her husband's desires that evening, but asks him to promise not to go to Badu anymore in exchange. Gerald thinks this is unfair, but the temptation gets the better of him, and they make love. Not long after, however, a storm hits the island and starts destroying their shelter. This makes Lucy panic as her memoirs are getting damaged. Gerald thinks it's futile to save them, and since they're on their last days on the island, he urges her to enjoy the intensity of nature. The following day, they wake up to boatmen arriving while their shelter is in ruins. Ronald then appears, announcing that they've completed Gerald's shop in Badu so they can go. This confuses Lucy since they still have a few days on the island, but the men reveal that they've already spent a month more than their supposed one-year adventure. This has Lucy in tears as she realizes that her adventure is over. Regretfully, she bids goodbye to the island before leaving. They soon arrive at Badu, where Gerald is happy to see the shop the villagers have built for him. However, Lucy decides not to stay since being a mechanic's wife isn't the life for her. Understanding this, her husband gives her his pack of cigarettes, reminding her to live happily. As Gerald finds happiness in his new island life, Lucy gets on a plane back to London. There, she opens the cigarette pack from her husband and finds the words "I love you" written on the lid. An egg pops out from inside, making the woman laugh at the final magic trick from the quirky writer.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.